In this video, we're only going to discuss the F1 sprint race that happened on the Saturday with qualifying being washed out. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. We had a good sprint race and there are a few topics which we need to cover. So firstly, let's talk about the start. I thought that Max did get a good launch. It wasn't like spectacular like it was last weekend in Mexico. And he did get in there alongside Charles. He was kind of competing for that P3 position. Obviously, Charles had the inside into turn 2, so it was going to be a challenging move to pull off. But the key point there really for me was that Max locked up the left front tyre. And at that point, when we saw the replays, I was a little bit concerned that he's going to have to carry that tyre, which has now got a flat spot on it for 24 laps around Brazil, which is going to be challenging for him. I was kind of expecting that that would hurt him a lot more than it did. Luckily, it didn't. Max showed great race pace, which is a good sign for him and the Red Bull. But it's a mistake that you don't want to be making in a sprint or a main race itself, because if that flat spot is sufficiently big enough, then it's just going to be like bumpy, bumpy, bumpy all the way down the straight. It's going to give you less grip in all of the right-hand corners when the front left is the loaded front. So yeah, Max got away with that one. So that was my first note on the docket, and I think he was very fortunate in that situation. It was interesting to see that the McLarens didn't swap their cars earlier. Lando started coming on the radio complaining, this is not what we discussed, what's going on? Sometimes I can't help but feel like what Oscar comes out and says to the world's press and media does not align with his actions sometimes. Like he's always like, yeah, I'll help when I'm asked and I'm happy to help. But then he goes off and just pulls out these gaps, and you know, he was running off into the distance and they had to tell him, no, come back and give Lando DRS. So I'm not sure, like Oscar's, you know, when the helmet goes on, they just want to win. And there are two people. There's Oscar with the helmet on and Oscar with the helmet off. And there's Max with the helmet on, who we saw in Mexico was chaos. And then there's Max with the helmet off. So just things change when the helmet goes on. I just want you guys to understand that it's a totally different person. I'm not sure what they discussed beforehand. I'm not sure what the best way to tackle that situation was. I would have thought as like get into turn 1 and then just try to switch them as quickly as possible. Like that would have made the most sense. But then you might have had a situation where Oscar was attacking Lando. I'm not sure. I just think like for the avoidance of all doubt and dramas, just switch them straight away and be done with it. Because then there was a few points in that race where it got a bit techie. So anyway, I digress. Lap 3, Max got a good run on Charles, and he had a good slipstream going down into the turn 4 braking zone. It's not a heavy braking zone. It's only a handful of gears, call it 3 or 4 gears down. It's not as heavy as say turn 1, for example. And Max got a good run on Charles. He was about to dive, and I think couldn't help but think, like with the old Max, like a few weeks ago, would he have just dived? It would surprise me that he didn't dive. Normally when Max gets into that situation and that position, he goes for it. So I'm not sure if something's changed. Like, I'm not sure. Let me know what you guys think, but I'm not sure if something's changed from Mexico, if he's being a little bit more cautious, or because it was Charles, Max was like, this is not worth it. He would have done that on Lando, but maybe not on Charles. But I just thought that was a little bit out of character from Max. Normally he would have sent it up the inside and see what happens. So I just noted that down mentally as out of character for Max. So they eventually swapped the McLaren cars towards the end of the race just before the VSC comes out. And Max did get extremely close to Oscar in that situation. Though in the final sector there, he was so close, but just out of the last corner, as Max gets on throttle, he gets a little bit greedy with his right foot, and Oscar just pulls a massive amount. So the McLaren's got so much rear grip, so much traction out of the final corner, which is really impressive. So Max he got greedy on throttle, put too much throttle down, a little bit of exit oversteer, just ruined his exit and his attacking opportunities. There was also an opportunity for Max to send it up the inside of Oscar into turn 4 as well. Again, we just saw him not go for it. So again, I can't help but feel that, you know, you guys let me know, is it because it's not Lando, or like my personal opinion, just for the avoidance of doubt, in Mexico, I feel like Max made a mistake there. It cost him points. I think he was probably guaranteed P4 in that race, and his penalty meant that he was P6. But there was no guarantee in my book that Lando was going to win that race. I mean, catching Carlos is one thing, passing is another. Was Carlos managing his race? Maybe. Did he have more in hand? Maybe. The Ferrari had the best top line speed in Mexico. I think it was like I showed it in my video. I think it was like 349 versus 342 or something. So the Ferrari had 7 kilometers more top speed than the McLaren. And the other point is, if Lando couldn't get past Max and was being held up by Max, what makes everyone think he would have just blown past, the race leader, the Ferrari of Carlos, who got 2 pole laps? I'm not sure. Like, I think there was more to it than just Lando's pace. So I think it was a genuine mistake from Max. It cost him points. And I'm wondering now, are we seeing a little bit of Max is just toning it back a little bit? There was 2 opportunities that he could have had a lunge into turn 4. He didn't go for either of them. Interesting to know. Now with the VSC infringement, let me explain to you guys how this works. So on the dash with the virtual safety car, the drivers have like a delta on their screen, and it tells them like, if they're plus, then they're good. So let's say it's plus 0.5 seconds. That means they're good. They're close to their delta. But if it goes negative, that means they're underneath their delta. They need to back off. So it's just to give the drivers a reference on how fast they need to be going. And the drivers try to keep that kind of plus, just plus 0 to plus 1 second. Keep it in that safe range. And obviously allow for a buffer, and you can sneak under a little bit, but if you stay under, you're going to get a penalty. And certainly if you are under that delta when the VSC ends, then you will get a penalty as well. So they get a message or lights or radio or whatever that says the VSC is now ending. So that's when you want to keep it kind of maybe 0.2, 0.3. You want to keep the delta just close to 0. Obviously you don't want to get a penalty. And then when it ends, bang, you want to go for it. I think you want to leave that margin in there. Max played a risky move here. He must have kept that closer to 0. He must have kept that really borderline 0. And then it snuck over to negative when the VSC ended, and that's a penalty. So he does get the 5 seconds. It does push him back behind Charles. Another mistake from Max Verstappen. I feel like that's 2 race weekends in a row we've seen some mistakes from Max. It didn't cost him much in this one, a point or something like that. So it's not the end of the world. But, that together with Mexico, there's 11 points there. So, interesting. I still feel like it's championship on now. It swings back and forth. Like, I felt like after the performance from the McLarens in Monza, like they did a great job in Baku. They were strong in Singapore, Netherlands, extremely strong. Monza. I'm like, that car works in all sorts of track conditions, from Singapore's to Monza's to Netherlands to Baku's. Like, I feel like it's in McLaren's court now. If they can just do a good job, they'll win. But then I saw Austin and I'm like, no, when it comes to the racecraft, Lando just doesn't have it for Max Verstappen. He just can't. But now I see again, like the McLaren's strong again, and there are opportunities back on. So it's just the mindset of the drivers, like, to come into the season with the champions mentality. And so far, that's only really been Max who's thought, no, I'm coming into this season to fight for the championship. Whereas I think with Lando, that switch has happened a little bit later. And the question is it too late? Because I think we can draw a line and say the McLaren will be the best car this season for sure. Okay, let's talk about race strategy tomorrow. If it will be dry, we're going to talk about the rain in a sec. It was interesting to see the McLarens up front. They started that medium stint doing 12.2s, and then they were doing 12.0s. They snuck into the 11s, and I think they ended up doing fastest lap of 11.7, something like that. So that's important to know. Do the tires get quicker? Does the car get quicker? Or do the tires go off and you have to make more pit stops? That pushes me, and how hard it was to overtake as well, that pushes me to think maybe a one-stop is the play this weekend, medium hard, if it's dry, of course. And if they have a set of mediums, we saw some guys burning them up if you burned up a set of mediums in practice, and then you ran 2 mediums in SQ1 and SQ2, and then you did a set of mediums in the sprint, you're out of mediums now. So what happens now? So you see what I mean? That's what I was saying in my video yesterday. You want to keep a set of mediums. At least 1, maybe 2, you're going to need them. So yes, they're probably going to do soft hard, I think, is the strategy now. But that's probably a little bit of a compromise strategy. Again, we're talking if it's dry, You guys saw quali. It was absolutely soaked. We spoke about this in our preview. We said Brazil, it's going to rain. What are the wet lines? What's the wet setup? Who's it going to favor? You know, where are going to be the dramas? We spoke about this in our race preview. We had a feeling that it was going to rain Saturday and Sunday, and there it came. So we're also sending a message to Franco to say, brush up on the wet lines, mate. Like, no point signing autographs. Like, you need to be on it. So Max did an amazing drive in 2016 here at Brazil. That's your blueprint, my friend. Go and study that race. Where's the grip? Where's the wet lines? I'm not sure if Franco's doing that work, but that's what my advice would be. Let's do a quick message to Argentina fans and Franco Colapinto fans in Spanish, and then we'll wrap up. Hola a todos, ojalá que estés bien. Como siempre, un mensaje y consejos para Franquito. Yo estaba pensando solo antes sobre de la mojada y las líneas en la pista mojada en Brasil también, que en 2016 Max hizo una muy bien carrera en la mojada, y Franco necesita estudiar las líneas y dónde necesita ir para encontrar el grip, ¿no? Entonces, yo estaba hablando sobre eso. Pero en la carrera de Franco, pues una empieza no súper bien, como normal, pero entre curva 1 y 2 hay un poco de tráfico y Franco puede conseguir unas posiciones, pues bien. Y durante la carrera, Franco estaba detrás del Alex Albon, que es enfrente, y estaban haciendo lo mismos vueltas, tiempo de vueltas, como normal. Entonces Franco tiene velocidad, creo que sí, y puede pelear por posiciones en la carrera mañana, pero la verdad es que necesita estudiar las líneas en la pista mojada. Como hablamos antes en nuestro preview de la fin de semana, ayer o en jueves o viernes, el vídeo que lo hice. No es fácil, Brasil en la mojada. También lo dije que necesita hacer una fin de semana sin errores. En Brasil es como un sprint, fin de semana de sprint, fin de semana con mojada, con la lluvia. Entonces necesita hacer una fin de semana sin problemas y sin errores. Pero yo sé que hay noticias malas en su familia, entonces tenemos que estar entendiendo de eso. Y mis pensamientos están en su familia también. En la clasificación esta tarde, pues hablamos ayer sobre del tiempo. Franco estaba perdiendo tiempo en las curvas porque estaba manejando en rotondas y no estaba haciendo unas curvas esquinas, y manejando en curvas acortadas se llama, donde puedes entrar con más velocidad, salir con más velocidad y hacer la rotación en una área muy pequeña durante la curva. Entonces, como Oscar lo hice también. Entonces, me gustaría ver Franquito estudiar esta noche, en serio, donde Oscar estaba encontrando tiempo, donde en 2016, donde Max estaba las líneas del grip durante la lluvia. Entonces me gustaría ver Franco estudiar esas cosas y hacer un buen trabajo esta tarde. Gracias como siempre. Ojalá que estos consejos te entiendes primeramente y le ayuda, claro. Como siempre, mándame un comentario o pregunta debajo, suscríbete a este canal y compartir con amigos o con tu social media o gente que puede encontrar esta sección del video útil. Muchas gracias, nos vemos. A quick summary there in English, guys. Franco needs to do a little bit of study. Where is the grip in the rain? Please see Max Verstappen 2016. That's your blueprint for what you need to do. He will also need to do a little bit of study on the short corner technique that we spoke about with the telemetry with Oscar Piastri yesterday. That's where Franco is bleeding lap time to Alex. He should be brushing up on that short corner technique if it is dry. And of course, always be thinking about race strategy. Like I said, I'd do medium hard if you had a set of mediums. But if not, probably soft hard would be the next best option. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave me a question or comment below. It does help the channel and boost things forward. I do my best to respond to you there, and give it a thumbs up as well, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my thoughts on the race on Sunday. Thanks guys, I will see you there.